this program name is Zero to Lab because it is mostly hands-on based program that we have created. Now, what happens is that Christian and I were seeing that most of the programs that we have for CCI on the CCI level, they were mostly like bootcamp style programs where you actually go through all the topics within 5 days bootcamp or 10 days bootcamp. And that's actually not enough time to prepare for CCI because there is so much information, starting with switching, then moving to routing, IP services, security, quality of service, VPN services, and then you go to monitoring, and then there are advanced services topics as well: SD-WAN, SDA, programmability, automation. So there are so many topics, and if you have to finish them in 5 days or 10 days, uh, at 10 to 11 hours every day, that's too much information, and you don't get time to practice it yourself. Maybe you're coming from CCNP, so you know few things already, but you still need a lot of practice for newer topics, and even to bridge the gaps, right, for the existing information that you already have. So we thought, let's create a program where we can give you some breathing space, building upon the information that we learn every week, and then you actually have the whole week to prepare to practice that thing again, and becoming very comfortable about that before going on to the next topic. So you will see that in this program, uh, first of all, we have a completely hands-on approach, but we make sure that your theory or the concept of that topic or fundamental aspect of that topic is very clear before we move to the configuration part. So we are not just blindly configuring things, we are understanding it in depth, and then we are backing it up with the configuration and the lab, right? So first of all, let's talk about the CCI exam itself, and then we'll see how this program can help you to achieve your goal of becoming CCI. The CCI exam that we have now, the CCI routing and switching exam that used to be called, now it is called CCI Enterprise Infrastructure Exam. And just like any other CCI exam, nowadays it is divided into two parts. So you'll see that there are two parts, of course. First of all, you need to do a written exam, which is basically called the CCI qual exam, qualification exam. Now, earlier there used to be a dedicated qual exam for CCI. So you had to pass your CCNP, which is the route switch issued if you want to do CCNP. And then when you want to appear for the CCI lab exam, you had to pass a CCI written exam, which used to be called CCI qual exam. But now the good thing is that while you are preparing for your CCNP and you pass one of the core exam of CCNP, which is called NCore, that also qualifies you to book the CCI lab. So once you pass this NCore exam, the written exam, then you will be able to book for the CCI lab exam anytime within the next 3 years. And that lab exam is the version 1.1 currently, which is active, CCI Enterprise Infrastructure version 1.1. And this is the 8 hours configuration part, the lab part. So the lab exam itself, you will see that it is an 8 hours hands-on based exam. So you go in the morning, one of the Cisco exam locations, and then you're going to configure things for the next 8 hours. Now, this 8 hours are also divided into two parts. So first part is called the design part. So the first 3 hours, you are going to actually solve the design questions. Now, design questions you will see is similar to the written exam because there will be multiple choice questions, drag and drop questions, but there will be no configuration involved. What I mean is that they will not ask you to actually click on any devices and configure them. But these questions will be heavily based on your theoretical and fundamental knowledge of that topic and the configuration knowledge of that topic as well. So they might actually show you an email exchange between an IT manager and an employee, or some kind of output of show commands. And based on that, you need to answer some questions, multiple choice questions. So actually in our course, we go in depth for the theory part for every single topic we are going to cover, whether it is routing protocols or VPN technologies or multicasting, IPv6 or software defined networking or programmability. So we make sure that we understand everything in depth. So that actually indirectly prepares you for this design part, because design part needs just the fundamental knowledge. There will be a question why OSPF neighborship is not coming up, and they might show you the output of some configuration on two routers. And if you know what is needed for the OSPF neighborship to come up, what needs to be same, what needs to be unique, different. That means then you will be able to answer the question correctly there. So you can see it depends on the fundamental knowledge of the technology. But once these 3 hours are done, then you go to the actual configuration part, which is the second part, deploy, operate, and optimize. This is where you will start actually configuring a topology. So you will have a new topology and you will get 5 hours and you need to configure the topology, the technologies or the protocols in that topology. So in this part, you will see that there are three major sections they will ask you questions about configuration wise. And I like to call them routing switching section, the core technology section, you can call them. Then the software defined networking. And the last section is the programmability section. So routing and switching or the core technologies is what you used to have completely into the earlier CCI exams, right? Where the software defined networking and programmability were not involved. For example, it starts with switching. You configure switching topics like VLANs, trunking, Ether channel, spanning tree protocol, and then you move on to the routing topics where you have the EIGRP, OSPF, PGP, IP version 6 routing protocols. And after that, you move on to the IP services. So NAT, NTP, DSCP, DNS, these configurations, policy-based routing, IP SLA configuration, service level agreement, and all these miscellaneous topics. And also you have the VPN technologies here. You have the GRE tunnels, IPsec tunnels, DMVPN, dynamic multi-point VPN, and of course MPLS layer 3 VPN, so MPLS L3 VPN over IPv4 or IPv6, and quality of service, multicasting. So you can see this is a very big section. To be honest, this is the biggest part of your 5 hours configuration into the exam. So many people actually think, okay, SDN is going to take a lot of time because it is new, software defined networking, or programmability is going to take a lot of time because it is new. But on the contrary, it is the routing and switching or the core part which will take most of your time into the configuration because it is literally huge. It has so many topics and they can ask you anything from these topics. Also, first up redundancy protocols, all this implementation will be here. So it takes more time to configure this part. Although it is something familiar, like most of these topics we do learn on CCN and CCNP. Some topics will still be new, which are not covered in CCNP level also. But still, it is the core routing and switching, so it is familiar. But it takes more time. And then when it comes to software defined networking, there are two branches of this. Of course, on the LAN side or on the campus side, it is called SDA, software defined access. And on the WAN side, which is called SD-WAN, software defined WAN. And this part surprisingly take comparatively less time to configure than the core part. And the reason is because it is mostly GUI based, graphical user interface. So what happens is that although it is new, and if you're not familiar or if you're not exposed to this, it may take some time to understand where to go, what to click, how to configure templates, how to configure policies, how to onboard devices, how to screen the devices, how to implement the VXLAN or the underlying Lisp technology. But once you understand where to go and what to click, it's actually easier to configure because it's GUI compared to the configuration of the routing uh, protocols like OSPF or BGP, where you have to remember the commands and configure them, or access control list or IPsec tunnels. You need to remember the commands. But in SDN, once you have the practice, you will know exactly where to go, what to click, and make your way around. Even if you forget something, you know which section it was part of, so I can go there and I can try to look for those things, right? Just to give you an example, let's say that if I'm going to, let me see if it is still open or did I took it down. Let's say I go to the Cisco SD-WAN vManager, right? So you can see that we go to the GUI of the vManager, and what happens is that you have to configure things based on this GUI. So you need to know where to go here. For example, I can see here, I want to see all the devices. I can go to the configuration and then devices. So when I click on configuration devices, I can see I have these five devices. into the WAN edge list, and the names are VH21, VH22, and so on. And in the control components, I have these three devices: vBond, vManage, and vSmart. And then I want to see the certification. So you can see on the configuration, there is a certificates tab. I want to configure templates, policies. You can see everything is here. So once you know where to go, how to configure things, how to create templates, how to configure policies, if you know the logic, then you just need to find it at the correct place into this output. And then in monitor, let me see the devices. Currently, they are up or down. You can see currently reachability, we have 5 VHS down, but the vBonds and other controllers are up. Just to give you an example, don't worry about this. We'll understand it in detail how to configure these things step by step. But the idea is that it is all GUI, so it's much easier. Even if you forget where it is something, you can actually go through these options and quickly see. Okay, where do I see certificates? I don't see here, here, and then you will come here and say, okay, I see certificates here. So it will be easier to maneuver and to actually move around here, right?
Yeah, it seems to me it's like the standard Cisco interface for controllers.
Right, right. So I see your question that can it be virtualized? Yeah, so it is actually virtualized. I'm currently connected to my local vManager, and I'll give you guys also the OVA files for the VM. I'll explain you what is OVA is, where you can import it into VMware workstation, and then you will be able to use it. You just need a little bit more resources for this. You should have at least 32 gig of RAM for the SD-WAN part, but most of the core technologies part that I was discussing, the routing switching part, 16 gig of RAM will be more than enough for all the topologies that we have. But for software-defined networking part, you should have at least 32 gig. Although 16 gig will also work, it doesn't mean it doesn't work, but it will be slightly slower, especially starting the devices and getting them ready. Once it is up, then it might be slightly faster, but initially it may take more time to boot and get it up to working. But yes, you will get everything from us. You don't need to pay anything for the SD-WAN part. It is the vManage, vSmart, we want all the controllers and the FVHs we can actually virtualize. And it needs a learning curve for doing certification and everything, but that is something we have already done. So you will get a working copy of the OVA. You can directly concentrate on what they're asking into the exam, and the logical part of SD-WAN, where I want to create, I want to control the OMP sessions. I want to control who can become who can exchange routes with which other VHS, and how to control devices using templates, and how to create policies, centralized policies, localized policies. So we'll directly jump into the part which is needed for the exam, rather than stepping through all the certification issues and getting things on board. That is not needed for the exam. In the exam, you will have a working topology already. You just need to start configuring it, controlling the settings, and configuration will also be there partially. You just need to fix it or add few things. So we'll see exactly how that part is done. So my point was that SDN is not going to take as much time as the core technologies are going to take in the exam, right? And programmability will be the shortest part into the exam. So yes, you do need to know what exactly are the different data structures, what is the Yang data model, what programmability exactly mean, and how do we send the API calls to the routers and switches to actually configure things or change things or delete things or retrieve some information from them using netconf or restconf. What kind of client-side softwares we need for restconf, for example, curl command or postman software. And when it comes to configuring programmability, simply means sending API calls to the devices, right? So if you use Python with this to automate this thing, it becomes automation. So that's why it is called automation and programmability. So how to create Python programs to automate this programmability part. Also, we are going to learn something like how exactly on-box Python works, so that within the Cisco CSR router, we can actually create a Linux container, and that Linux container will have Python already installed. So you can interact with the host router from within the router's Linux container and start configuring it using the Python program. We can also use EEM, which is the router's internal programming language, embedded event management, to invoke some Python programs based on some events. So if something happens, a certain Python program should be executed. We can actually configure routers like that as well. So we are going to learn that as well. And don't worry if you don't know anything about Python or if you are new, we are going to cover the basics of Python as well into this program so that you get to the level which you need for the for understanding the basic part of Python and how exactly we are going to use those things to automate things as far as the routing and networking is concerned. So although this part is again very new, but it in exam once you know what you're looking for, it will not take much time, and you will see that it will be the shortest part, this the least amount of time you need to spend into this particular part, right, which is the programmability. So this is the exam structure. It's an 8-hour exam where first 3 hours is mostly MCQs based on your fundamental knowledge, and the next 5 hours is the configuration. So don't worry, you think okay that we only have 5 hours, so how do we configure it? And especially if I show you the one of the part of the topology, let me see if I yeah, for example, this one is the routing and switching part. So it's a multi-protocol lab we will do later. Once we finish all the topics, single protocol labs, then we will switch to multi-protocol lab where we will configure layer 2. On the top of that, we will configure layer 3, and then we'll configure IP services, security, DMVPN, uh, and QoS, multicasting, MPLS. So all these things will be configured in this topology for the core technologies, right? The routing switching part of that. So it will be similar to the exam, and you see that it's a quite a big topology. There are many routers and switches, but in the exam also you will have everything pre-configured. So pre-configured and partially configured. So for example, when I say OSPF area 1, so OSPF process 1 area 0 in data center, then it is already configured. You just need to fix it on some certain ports. Maybe it is deliberately missing on some certain ports or misconfigured on some certain ports. So you just need to check and fix the missing configuration according to the instructions you will see into the multi-protocol lab. But of course, before we get to this lab, don't worry, we are not going to start with this one. We are going to go through single protocol labs. So single protocol lab simply means that we will take one topic and we'll go in depth into that topic theory wise and back it up with a configuration practical. So for example, we will use a topology something like this for the routing protocols. You can see there are 8 routers and we can configure different routing protocols. And based on depend on which protocol we are currently working on, I will actually send you the same topology, but with different borders. Like if I'm talking about OSPF today, then I may send you this topology, same topology, but you can see now I can see there is area 0 in the middle, then area 1 on area 2, area 1 and area 2 on one on each side. So similarly, if I'm sending you a BGP lab, I may actually create the BGP autonomous system boundaries or EIGRP boundaries like that, depending on which topic are we covering that day. Based on that, I'm going to send you the topology and the requirement according to that. Similarly, for switching, we will have different topologies. So these are single protocol labs. So when I start a topic, for example, if I'm starting BGP, I'm going to start from the scratch, assuming you don't know anything about BGP, and then we'll go all the way to the required level that we need for the CCI exam, right? And some topics will be only 1 day topic or one session topic, smaller topics like CDP or LLDP. But some topics will take multiple sessions also, like BGP. It can take more than 6 sessions or almost 6 sessions to complete it because we'll cover many aspects of BGP. Just to give you an example, right? So we are going to cover these single protocol labs as well. So as I mentioned, devices will be partially pre-configured and you will just need to configure the devices as per instruction. So how exactly is this course going to help you in achieving your CCI goal? So this course is actually structured in a way that we go through different topics each week, and then we give you the whole week to do the same topic or same labs again, not to cram anything or not to remember anything, just to practice it again so that whatever you learn into the live session, you can repeat it and just solidify your understanding and strengthen your remembering of that topic by practicing, right? So that's why we will have one session per week, and these sessions are going to be 2 hours per session, except today is just the introduction, so it will be smaller. And also, generally what happens, every week we are going to take some topic. So I always say this in my classes that these classes are not time driven classes, these are topic driven classes. So sometimes some topics may be Smaller topics will take less than 2 hours. Some topics we might have to go slightly more than 2 hours. So 2 hours is just a rough idea, but mostly it depends on the topic that we are covering that week. And that's where we start the session. So when I start session every week, when we will start the new session, we'll start with the topic discussion or the theory part, and this is going to be the advanced discussion. Unless you request me that, hey, I don't know anything about this, although it is part of and again, we'll start from scratch for every new topic. But if I see that, okay, I'm going to talk about EIGRP, which you already learn in CCNP, and then you are coming here, and you want to learn something advanced about EIGRP. So yes, I will cover the basics of EIGRP, but rather quickly before moving on to the advanced part which we need for the CCIE. But let's say if you request me, can you go through EIGRP in detail? We can switch to the detailed EIGRP as well, where we will cover everything that you learn in CCNP as well. But of course, if you are going to talk about, let's say, MPLS, I'm going to go detail anyway. If I'm going to talk about multicasting, I'm going to go into the detail anyway. So any advanced topics like DMVPN or SD-WAN or programmability, we will go start from scratch. We'll go all the way to the end level. But span entry protocol, for example, you learn it from CCNA, then again you learn it in CCNP, and then here you are just getting the refresher, right? So we can actually concentrate on the advanced part of it, and only the parts where we need to understand how the traffic manipulation can be done by changing the cost or changing the port priority, changing the bridge priority, and how are the different advanced topics work, like root card, loop card, BPDU card, BPDO filter. So we can actually concentrate on the slightly advanced configuration for that, right? And of course, whenever we are going to talk about any topic, I always concentrate, no matter which class it is, CCNA, CCNP, or CCIE, I always concentrate on a topic with three questions: what, why, and how. So, what are we talking about? What is this topic? Why do we need this? And why part is very important because it tells you what problem is it solving in networking world. And then of course, once you know what problem it is solving, you have the enough motivation to learn it, and then we will discuss the how part, how to configure it, which is actually easier once you have the interest, and your brain will have the interest once it knows the why. Without the why, if I start just telling you the commands, your brain will reject it, will say, why would I need to learn this? So why is important here. And every topic we are going to learn in the same way. Like when we talk about software defined networking, what exactly is SDN? So in traditional networking, every device, it has the uh, management plane, control plane, and data plane, right? So you actually connect to the device so that you can configure it. That is management plane using secure shell or telnet or GUI. And then you have the control plane where you exchange the reachability information. You can configuring switching protocols and routing protocols. So the switching table, MAC address table, and routing table, that is your control plane. And then on acting on that information, so I have the reachability information. Now I receive the packets. I, based on my reachability information, I forward the packets. That is called data plane. So in SDN, what we do, we decouple these three planes. And on the physical devices, the foot soldiers that we have, all the edge devices, we actually keep only the data plane, and the control plane we take from all of these devices and put it into a central location which we call the controller, so that all the brain is now into the controller. We basically create all the policies to have the reachability information directly on the controller. So we don't configure it separately on each device. Devices are being used only to forward the traffic or receive the traffic, foot soldiers only, right? And similarly, the central management plane is another GUI, some workstation where I can see a single pane of glass, everything what's happening, and I can create policies, push them to the controller, and the controller can push them to all the devices. So once you understand, okay, that's what SD-WAN is. And then comes the question, why do I need to do this? What is the benefit? Well, there are many benefits, right? You have a central point of configuration so that you don't need to individually log into every device to configure it. They are not individually deciding what to do. It is decided on the controller itself. And even if you need slightly different decisions on the devices, you can also have localized policies pushed from the controller. So you have everything controlled from a central location. That is the reason why you are doing this. And once you understand that, then implementation becomes easy, right? So this was just an example. Don't worry, we are going to cover SD-WAN or SDA in depth when it comes to the software defined networking part. Just to give you an example, that we always go through what, why, and how. That's how we do the topic discussion. But of course, any discussion is incomplete if we don't back it up with some kind of configuration, right? So that's where we will have the live configuration with troubleshooting within the class. What I mean by this is that let's say I'm starting IPv6 configuration today. So I'll explain you everything about IPv6 into the first part of the session. And the second part, I'm going to boot up all the devices in our EVNG. EVNG is the software that we are using for us emulating all the routers and switches. And then I'm going to show you the configuration based on the single protocol labs that we have. So there you will be able to see exactly what I was talking about earlier. You can see that into the practical, into the implementation, and you'll see, okay, you are saying that in IPv6 EIGRP, you need to enable the process on the router level also. So no shutdown command is needed inside router EIGRP as well. And then you will see this in practical when we configure IPv6 EIGRP or IPv6 OSPF or BGP address family IPv6. So then you will be able to see the configuration as well. And once the class is done, I'm going to send you the lab that we were discussing into the class along with the solution over the email. So you will actually get the topic labs with the solution. And why solution is also being sent? Because it is very easy to get into the learning mode when you are into the Zoom session, because you are sitting there listening to me, seeing me configure things. So it is very easy to go into the learning mode. But as soon as I send you the lab, so many students excuse me, so many students switch to the testing lab. They try to test themselves. Okay, whatever we learn into the Zoom session, can I do it now? No, don't test yourself. You still need to have the learning attitude or the learning mindset when you are doing the lab on your own. So anytime you get stuck somewhere, feel free to look at the solution file, because when you get stuck and you see the solution file, your brain will remember, okay, I got stuck at this point and then I quickly knew what solution was, so next time I will remember it. So you're still learning, you're still solidifying your understanding and trying to strengthen your remembering of the configuration and the logic of the topic. So that's why solution, feel free to look at the solution file as much as you want, because you're still learning when you're doing the labs on your own during the week, right? So you are not going to take the test unless you reach to the particular testing part. Like sometimes every now and then I will take a break on the Zoom session. So I'll say, okay, next week we don't have the live class. Instead, I'm sending you a multi-protocol lab for the switching part, or multi-protocol lab on the routing part only. So you need to configure everything that you have learned into the switching or routing or advanced services. So there you may try to check yourself that how much do you regain, and then there also we will have a solution file that you can always refer, right? So no issue there at all. So we are also going to have the doubt clearing. So how exactly doubt clearing will work is we will have the solution file. So whenever you are doing the lab on your own, you can always refer to the solution file to see what the answer is and why the answer is like that. In case if solution file is not clear or you have a different approach to configure it and you don't know why I used a different approach, you can always ask the questions on our Facebook group. So we have a Facebook group where we have all our students. So you can ask questions there. It's a very live community. You can ask questions, get the answers, or even you can read other people's question and see what answers were there. So you can get the information from there. Or you can also ask the question by typing a comment below the videos. What do I mean by that? So every session we are going to have, you will see that there is a recording for that topic as well. The recording may be from one of the previous classes, not the latest class, but the topics will be same because we have so many 0 to lab classes going on, and the topics that we cover are the same. So you will see the topics or the subject will be same in the video, but might not be from the existing class. The recording might be from one of the previous class. But let's say I'm covering EIGRP today, and you go back and watch the recording of EIGRP on the portal. Then below the video, you will see that there is a comment section where you can type your comment. So while you're watching video and you have a question, you can pause it, type the question into the comment, send it, and then you can go back to watching the video. That also comes directly to me, and I can send you a reply, and you will get a notification once you get the reply, right? And the last option is to send emails, right? So email, I would prefer that you don't actually ask technical questions on the email, because we mostly use this only for sending and receiving labs and any kind of planning any kind of Zoom sessions for support. But that's why it might be a little bit late to get the answer over email. It's better to ask it on the Facebook group or videos. That is faster. But yes, that is also an option in case if you don't have Facebook group and you want to ask a detailed question that you cannot ask in the videos, like maybe some screenshots and anything, then you can ask it on email as well. And of course, we also have a Q&A session at each live Zoom session at the end of the session. So after every week after the class, I'm going to ask you, do you have any questions or any doubts? And you can ask the questions or doubts there. But this part is a quick Q&A. So you can, if you have some quick questions or smaller questions, you can ask here. But if it's a detailed question where you need to show me some outputs and you need to ask me why something is not working, can you compare the configuration? Then the Facebook group will be a better idea, or email, because you can send me the screenshots and the configuration copies, and then I can compare it based on which lab you are doing. And that will be a more detailed answer, and I can give you a detailed explanation. And the better that is actually better because you can have it in your email, so you can keep it for next time to read it again as well. But if it's a quick question, of course you can ask into the class as well, right? Also, as I mentioned, that anything that you are going to learn here, you will also see a recording on the portal and you will be able to watch it. So how long do you have the access for the recordings? So you have the lifetime access to the class recordings. So maybe not from this class, maybe one of the previous classes, but we make sure that the topics are up to date. So everything you see in the recordings will be from the existing CCIE blueprint. So let's say something happens and you cannot take the exam, life happens, and then you come back after a couple of years after completing the course and you say, okay, you know what, now I want to take the exam and I want to go through some topics again, but I see that there is a new blueprint and there are new topics involved. So do I get access to those as well? Of course, because we will update our recordings accordingly. If there are new topics or new features that are added, we update our recordings accordingly, and you have the access to the recordings for the lifetime. So anything new added in future, you will also get access to that, even if your live classes already done. So that's why it becomes an extremely valuable asset in your preparation for the CCI. So you will see that the major section that we are going to go through in the course is, of course, we are going to start with the fundamental topics. As I was telling you earlier, the core topics, which takes the most time into the CCI. So we start with switching, and in switching we cover VLANs, trunking, the MAC address table, how exactly switches behave, what is the difference between different kind of switching structure, and spanning tree protocol, Ether channel, and span, RSpan, CDP, LLDP, how do these things work? That will be part of the switching. But switching is quite actually trimmed down into CCI exam or lately. Earlier, it used to have a lot of other topics as well, like Q and Q tunnels, Flex VPN. They have removed all these things. They are concentrating on the core switching topics only, mostly STP and Ether channel. And because they had to make some room for the newer technologies like SD and programmability, so switching is now very specific, in depth, but very specific, not having 10,000 different topics here. Then we move on to routing, of course. In routing, we have the IGPs, which is EIGRP, OSPF, static and default routing. And then we have BGP for both IPv4 and IPv6. And in the routing part, you will see some other topics like PBR and IPSLA, how exactly they affect the traditional routing. Then we have the VPN technologies. So in VPN, we are going to learn what is the concept of tunneling, like GRE tunnel, IPsec tunnel. Also, how do we actually configure VPNs over managed service providers like MPLS, where your complete path is exclusive to your organization, or unmanaged service provider like internet. So I just want to use internet reachability to go from one branch to another branch. So dynamic multi-point VPN or DMVPN. So we are going to learn these things here. Multicasting, which is an important part of the exam. Also, IP services like, as I mentioned earlier, NET, network address translation, DHCP, DNS implementation, network time protocol, quality of service, security topics like ACLs on layer 3 level, or on layer 2, we have some topics like DHCP snooping, IP source card, dynamic ARP inspection, or monitoring topics like SNMP and net flow or flexible net flow. These things we are going to cover into this part. So this is just a basic idea. Of course, there might be a few more things apart from this. I was just giving you some examples of these topics. But then the second part is, as I mentioned, SDN or software defined networking. So in software-defined networking, we have SDA, which is for the LAN side or campus side, and SD-WAN for the WAN side. And the last part is, of course, automation and programmability. So this part where we learn the data models, data structures, RESTconf and NetConf protocols, also how exactly EM and Python can be used, on-box Python implementation, and how we can use the client-side protocols like curl or Postman to actually access the devices and change the configuration of the devices, right? So what is the labs structure that we have? So as I mentioned earlier, that every week we are going to go through different topics, which we call the single protocol labs. And in single protocol lab, for example, we may today's topic may be spanning tree protocol part one, and I'll explain you in detail how STP work, followed by a lab which I'm going to explain you how to do, or at least the commands that are involved into the lab. We will talk about those, and then I'll send you the lab. So every week we are going to go through different topics which are called single protocol labs because we concentrate on one topic in that particular configuration. But then, of course, once we are done with the core topics, we'll actually also do the multi-protocol labs. And these are also known as mock labs, right? Similar to the CCI exam, the real CCI exam, where you need to, as I was showing you earlier, like many router switches. So you need to configure everything on the same topology, starting with layer 2, then layer 3, and then VPN technologies and all these things. So you configure everything on the same topology. You build one over the other. And as you can see, it's like a pyramid. So if your layer 2 is broken, your layer 3 will not work. If your layer 3 is broken, your services will not work. So that's why multi-protocol labs are slightly more challenging because everything is connected to each other as well. And one thing has to work before the next thing can work. And one broken thing can have a cascade and or a dominoes effect and can break other things as well. So multi-protocol labs will actually prepare you for exam. But before you can do the multi-protocol labs, you need to have the individual topics knowledge. That's why we have these single protocol labs as well, right? So what program or what protocol are we going to use, or sorry, what software are we going to use for this? So we are going to use EVNG for practical. So EVNG is an emulator. Now there's a difference between simulator and emulator. So simulator basically simulate the original device. It's actually a software which will mimic how the device will show you the output. It's not actual device. But emulators actually have the real operating system images in the backend. So EVNG actually uses the real iOS images from the routers and switches or SD-WAN images. And then it is just the front end. So front end is not hardware, but a software like EVNG. So you get all the features that you would get in a real router or switch as well into the EVNG software, right? So what happens is that if you want to use routers or switches in EVNG, you need to first of all install the EVNG software, which is free of cost. You can go to evng.net and you can download it from there, and you can actually import it as a program into VMware. So you need VMware Workstation or VMware Workstation Fusion if you're using Mac laptops, Intel based only. M series laptops do not support nested virtualization. So Windows machine is recommended for this. But yeah, once you install EVNG, you will see it's a blank software. You need to somehow acquire the operating system images. You need to copy them into the EVNG. Then you need to license them. After licensing them, you need to open the GUI and then start creating topologies that you would need for the exam. So we wanted to make sure that we remove all this hassle from your side so that you can directly concentrate on configuration right from day one, right? So we have done everything for you already. So I have created the EVNG. I have already copied all the important operating system images and licensed them as they need. Certification installation is also done. And then I also created the topologies. As I was mentioning earlier, we have these different topologies that we can use, like this one for single protocol or this one for multi protocol. And these topologies are pre-built into EVNG. So you don't need to do anything, any of these things. You can directly start configuring the devices right from day one. So I compiled everything into a single packaged file, which is called the OVA file. So the extension is .ova, like zero to lab.ova. And this is the file I sent you in the welcome email. Remember OVA and the Windows Client Pack email I sent you. So in case if you haven't received that email, let me know. I will send it to you again. But there will be a Dropbox link into that email where you can download the OVA file. So what do you need to do from your side? You just need to install the VMware software. So once you install the VMware, which is again free of cost, it's a free software, especially the player or the Fusion player. But the problem is that nowadays VMware has been taken over by another organization called Broadcom. So the website is not very intuitive. It's all over the places. So it's not very easy to find the workstation there. So that's why in our welcome email, I also included another link from our personal Dropbox, from our organization Dropbox, where you can download the VMware Workstation 17 right directly from there. So you don't need to go to the Broadcom website and you can download it from there. But once you download VMware, that's the only thing you need to do on your side. And then you need to download the OVA file. And then you just need to go to the file, open, or you can press Control plus O. And then you need to select that OVA file, right? The one that I sent you earlier. So once you select it, you can give it a name and it will actually become something like this, like zero to lab. You see here, it will be like this. But once you click on your OVA, it will give you the option to play it or edit the virtual machine settings. So you can go to the virtual machine settings and set your how much RAM do you want to give, like depending on how much you have. As I mentioned, for the single protocol labs, 8 gig or 16 gig will be enough. But for software defined networking, 16 to 32 gig will be needed. Just make sure the network adapter is set to net. Then only you will receive an IP and you will be able to connect to the GUI of the EVNG. So once you boot it, you will actually see something like this. And don't worry, we do have a step-by-step video on our portal for this as well. How to install, how to import OVA, how to use it, and everything. So whatever I'm telling you here, you will also see into the recording, the EVNG setup video. So you will be able to do it by just following that video after installing VMware. But yeah, once you boot the OVA, the EVNG, you will see an IP address here. You don't need to log into this CLI because this is the backend Linux machine for the EVNG. This is used for maintenance of images and all. So you don't need to log into the CLI. You just need to note down the IP you will get here. And then of course, your case, you may get a different IP. And you just need to open the IP into a browser. So I can see here 79.137 is my IP. Let's go to the browser and let's open this. So when I open the IP, you can see it comes to the EVNG login page. The username is admin and the password is EVE, which is the name of the software EU. And you just sign in. And when you sign in, you see this is the topology I was showing you earlier also, right? Routing topology. But you will actually land up on this page where you will see all the topologies that we have. Now, in my case, you will see more topologies because I was playing around with different things also. But in your case, you will see the base lab, the multi-protocol lab, and then you will also see Ether channel, MAC address, MST, SPAN, RSPAN, STP. So for switching part, we have different smaller topologies like VLANs, VTP. But then for most of the routing topics, single protocol, we use base lab. You can see in the base lab, if I click on that and I click on open here, it actually shows me these routers where you can, if you watch that video on the portal, even the setup video, it will show you how to start the devices, how to save the configuration, how to stop the devices, how to revert back to the base configuration if you are starting again or if you are starting a new lab. All these things will be mentioned there, right? Also, if you are doing a switching lab, you will go to that one. Like let's say if I'm going to STP lab 1 or STP lab 2. So based on that, I will have some routers, switches instead of the routers, and I need to configure configuration based on that, right? So if you go to the multi-protocol lab and you click on open, you will see it is the same lab I was showing you earlier with the DMVPN connection, MPLS, multiple branches, and this will be similar to what you will see into the exam, right? All right, I see a question from Keith. Okay, so you tried to change the RAM to 16 gig and it gave you an error. So you left it to the default 8 gig. So 8 gigs should be okay for the single protocol left, but you should be able to go to 16 gig if you already have 32 gig. Were there any other programs running? Maybe it depends on that. Or what you can do is after this session, you can send me an email with the screenshot, and I'll see what exactly the error it is showing you when you try to do that, right? So we can take it from there. No problem. Thanks. So you can see that this is the software we use, EVNG, and that way you will be able to do all the practicals on your own as well. So last part is how this program can help. So just to sum it up, we are going to make sure that we go in depth and all the advanced concept sessions to understand the protocols and technologies on a deeper level. And I have been in training just for more than 15 years. So not actually 15 now, almost 18 years. And this is one of the things that I really like, to explain things and to go into the detail, and then we back it up with the configuration. So this is although it's a cliche, but training is a passion for me. So I will make sure that when we go through different topics, we are not going to go through in a robotic manner, like I'm teaching you some facts and then just remember those facts and then we move to the configuration. You need to remember the commands. No, that's not actually a good way of learning anything. As I mentioned, we always break it down into the what, why, and how. And assuming always that you don't know anything about a topic, that actually the advantage of that is that if you already know that topic, you will bridge the gaps and you will fix the smaller issues that you have with the topic. And if you don't know about it, of course, you will learn the topic. So that's the approach we're going to take. And we always have the troubleshooting mindset. So troubleshooting is always the easiest part once you know the fundamentals. I always say this: troubleshooting is knowing what's supposed to happen and versus what's currently happening. So if you can compare these two things, you will easily be able to find out what is the issue and how to fix it. For example, if the BGP session is not coming up, you need to check what's supposed to be there between two routers to become BGP neighbor. What are the points that you need to check? You need to know that. And then you can see what's exactly what is currently happening. You can compare these two and see what is missing there, right? So we will have a troubleshooting mindset throughout the program because we will concentrate on the fundamentals of the topic, right? And of course, building foundational strength with the single protocol labs. So whenever we learn a topic, we back it up with the configuration so that you become more confident with the information that you learn. And of course, every now and then, we will have mini cluster labs as well, which are going to be like multi-protocol labs, but mini multi-protocol labs section wise. So let's say we are done with switching part, then I'll tell you, okay, next week we don't have a live class. Instead, I will send you another lab, but it will not be just for STP or just for Ethernet or just for VLAN. It will have everything, and you need to build everything up after the switching part. And the same thing we will do for the routing part as well. So every now and then we will also have multi-protocol labs also, but not the full multi-protocol lab, like mini cluster labs, we call them, right? And also gaining required pace for the exam with the exam like multi-protocol lab. So once we are done with all the single protocol labs and we switch to the multi-protocol lab, you need to first have the accuracy, and then you can actually work on your speed, the pace of how you configure it. So don't worry, when you are doing the multi-protocol lab first time, you don't need to do it within 5 hours as in the exam you're supposed to do. You can take up to 2 days also, 3 days also, because first your objective should be that you understand every single question, exactly what it is asking, and accurately how to configure it, and then how to check it. So once you know the complete life cycle of the questions and make sure that you don't have any doubt about any question, why it is asked like this, how exactly it is working, then you can start working on your pace. So you can do it again and again, not to cram anything, but just to have that habit of doing things faster, because in exam that will be very crucial to do and configure things faster, to check things faster, right? But of course, the speed or the pace comes after the accuracy. Accuracy has to be first. You have to be accurate in configuration, understanding everything of the lab before you can become faster into that lab. Just like when you learn to typing, uh, nobody cares if you can type 100 words per minute, if you're typing gibberish, if you're typing something rubbish. But if you're typing systematically, first you learn how to place your fingers on the correct keys. You need to know that which keystrokes need which finger, and then you can slowly build the speed. And then if you are even 40 words per minute, 50 words per minute, but you are typing correctly, accurately, that is very valuable, right? That same logic applies into the CCI exam as well. So that's why I always say first accuracy, then comes the speed. And of course, uh, after the program is done, after we are done with our CCI Zero to Lab program, we are also going to have some strategy building to achieve your CCI number. So this part, we need the personal one-to-one sessions once the program is done, like just to decide your next step, that how many days more you need before you go for the exam, and what should be your structure to practice everything, what should be which areas you need to concentrate more, and then preparing like a action plan for you before you take the exam, right? So as I mentioned about tools, that we are going to use EVNG, and topologies are actually already set, pre-built into the EVNG. And during the off days in a week, you are encouraged to do the labs again. And of course, you can contact me in case you have any questions, right? So EVNG itself basically is part of the OVA. So I have already created a compiled, a packaged OVA file, which I sent you in the email. As I mentioned, for the single protocol labs, mostly recommended RAM is 8 gig, but for SD-WAN, it is 16 to 32 gig at least will be needed. And what you should do is, when you go to the properties of the virtual machine, once you import it, you can set the memory according to your requirement, but make sure the network adapter is set to net. And then you restart the machine, and then you will definitely get the IP. As I showed you, after booting, it shows you the IP address, right? So that's the structure I wanted to discuss today. Lastly, what is expected from your side? So remember, the consistency is the key. So just show up into the classes, do the labs, and ask questions, right? And overall, be consistent so you don't actually fall behind into the topics that we are covering. Although we do have a lot of support in that case. Also, if you fall behind, you can watch the recordings. You can go through the labs again, because you have your own EVNG setup. So you don't need to depend on the rack rentals to do the lab. Anytime you feel like doing lab, you have it on your laptop or your desktop. So it's easier to become consistent if you have every resources with you. But yeah, these are the only things needed from your side, and then we will make sure that everything else is taken care by us, right? A little bit about myself. My name is Arpit Pandit, and I have more than 18 years of network training experience. I have two CCIs. I did first one into the routing and switching. It used to be called that time, and then the second one into the service provider. So when I was doing routing switching CCI, I fell in love with the MPLS part of it, and I said, okay, where can I learn more about MPLS? And then I found out CCI service provider is purely like MPLS on adrenaline, right? So MPLS on crack basically. So I said, okay, I want to learn that, and I went for the CCISP and did that as well, which was purely MPLS over everything, or MPLS over layer 3, layer 2, security over MPLS, traffic engineering over MPLS. So that was really fun. And I have, out of this, more than 13 years of CCI training experience, because I have taught many CCI students. Many of those students, I think more than 60 students have passed CCI exam as well. Some passed into the first attempt, some had to take more attempts, and some people never got around to take the exam. And that is the biggest part in the CCI. You will see uh, it actually improves your chances of getting a better job or a promotion, or just having more knowledge in the field, if you just attempt the exam, because that takes a lot of courage to even attempt the exam, versus just preparing and then saying, okay, I don't think I can do the exam. So even if you're attempting the exam, you're trying to pass the exam, that actually shows your level of preparation and level of commitment, and that makes a huge difference. And then of course, if you're committed, then yeah, there is no way that you cannot pass the exam, right? It depends on the performance on that particular day. So I am CCI number 36410, routing switching and service provider. And I do have some practical experience also, because of the consultation work I do with service providers. So I always keep an eye on the latest technologies, like which kind of security or routing and switching and implementation technology are being used. And if there is anything that I can include into our CCI course to improve or enhance our experience, I always do that as well. So having said that, let's get started. Thank you so much.